Ready? What? Is it going?
Yeah.
Okay, standing here at what's called the Shrine of the Book in Jerusalem, Israel. And this is where they house the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls were found back in 1947 in these caves down by the Dead Sea. And what happened was a little Bedouin boy was watching his sheep and he lost one of them. And he saw these caves, so he threw a stone down in the cave and he heard a shatter, something like pottery shattering. So he went down the cave and he found this scroll, which turned out to be one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Isaiah. And it later was purchased by an antiquities dealer, and Israel eventually bought them. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found fragments from every book in the Old Testament except the book of Esther, but they found the whole book of Isaiah completely intact. And the Dead Sea Scrolls date anywhere from 100 to 200 BC, years before Jesus. And up until that time, the scroll that we're using to translate the Hebrew into our English Bibles is called the Masoretic Text, and that scroll dated to about 900 AD, 900 years after Jesus. But it's interesting when they compared those two scrolls, there's a 1,000-year difference between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Masoretic Text, and when they compared them, they were virtually identical. That shows that God had preserved His Word. Because a lot of people are skeptics, say, "Oh, the Bible's been copied so many times and it's lost a lot." But they found no, that was not the case. They were virtually identical. And then also interesting on the whole book of Isaiah, I was witnessing to a Jewish friend of mine, and I showed him Isaiah chapter 53, the greatest chapter, messianic chapter in the Old Testament, about the suffering of the Messiah. He was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquity. All we like sheep have gone astray. The Lord laid on Him the iniquity of us all. He was cut off from the land of the living, buried in a rich man's tomb, and then arose from the dead. And when I showed that to my Jewish friend and he read it, I asked him, "Well, who do you think that's talking about?" And he said, "Oh yeah, it's talking about Jesus." But then he said, "I think that this chapter was added by the Christians after the time of Jesus." Well, then I explained to him, when they found the scroll of Isaiah, chapter 50, of course they didn't have the chapter divisions, but chapter 53 was right there. It was not added later by the Christians. And most Jewish people who come to faith in Jesus, they do so by reading Isaiah chapter 53. And isn't it fitting that God has that whole book of Isaiah found to show that not only had God preserved His Word, but that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah.